Here we are live on YouTube in State Controlled Britain, and we've got the world's best expert in nutrition with us, Richard Smith. Hello, Richard Smith.
Stephen Thomas, way too kind as always. Thank you very much. Nice to see you.
It's nice to see you. It's always a pleasure. Very unusual that we've turned up and not one person has put a question yet, but you can put your questions in the chat, put a Q in front of it, or QQQ so it stands out. If you want to jump the queue, no pun intended, you can also do a super chat or a sticker just to support our work here. Lots of fumbling there, Richard, we can hear over the thing. Herbert is saying good evening. Good evening, Herbert. You're first up. Great comment. And here we go. Sue is saying, hi, guys. Lovely to see you. And straight in with a question that I know Richard will love. Let's go straight for it. Right. Stop messing with your mic. Hello, you two lovelies. A quick question for Richard. Is it okay to drink raspberry bomb hot? I made it this morning with a chocolate MCT and it was gorgeous.
Interesting. So the raspberry bomb, which contains stevia, so don't shoot me for the rest of you who are carnivore, but the raspberry bomb is exogenous ketones. And yes, there are lots of carnivores who still are happy to consume a little bit of stevia, but we do an unflavored version, which is completely devoid of that. So what Jill is doing there is mixing the raspberry bomb, which obviously tastes of raspberry, all natural ingredients, by the way, there's no artificials, exogenous ketones with MCT. Now, the reason that Jill is mixing it is the MCT, which is pure C8, and by certification, the world's highest purity, works synergistically with the exogenous ketones to increase the efficacy and utilization, transportation of the ketones. But Jill, the short answer to your question is yes, you can add the raspberry bomb to hot water, no problem at all. So it sounds like you're making some sort of chocolate raspberry, which is, yeah, fantastic. Sounds absolutely delicious.
Yes, it does, doesn't it? And that's the thing. You see, it's good for you and it's tasty. It's a win-win, isn't it? Right. Herbert is saying, is there, I'm thinking, is there such a thing as too much of an electrolyte?
Look, brilliant question, Herbert. Herbert is a fantastic supporter of the channel. Yes, look, you can consume too much of anything in simple terms, but let's put this into perspective. We are told that we should consume no more than 1.5 grams or 1,500 milligrams of sodium each day. Yet, when we look at one of the biggest studies ever done on sodium, it actually shows an inverse association. And what it shows is anything below 1.5 grams or 1,500 milligrams shows a great increase of all-cause mortality, which is death, essentially. Now, interestingly, the more sodium that we consume, the lower our risk or the lower all-cause mortality. And it appears that the sweet spot is around 4,000 to 6,000 milligrams. So that's 4 to 6 grams. Now, this study was done on 17 countries. It covered over 100,000 participants. So it's a very, very big study. And what it measured was the excretion. So it measured sodium excretion. So we can assume that what we excreted is at least what we consumed. Now, what we tend to find is that people living a ketogenic or carnivore-based lifestyle consume in excess of 10,000 milligrams of sodium each day. So roughly 8 times the recommended daily allowance. I some days consume considerably more. But look, in short, yes, we can consume too much electrolyte, too much potassium. For example, potassium chloride is used in lethal injection. So excessive amounts of potassium chloride, incredibly dangerous. But too much of any electrolyte is essentially dangerous. But the body is incredibly intuitive. And what we tend to find is, think of when you salt your meal. You add a little bit of salt to your meal. Sometimes it's not salty enough, so you add a little more. Sometimes it's a little too much, so you add a little less. You do this intuitively. Your body tells you when it wants more salt. And that's my recommendation when it comes to the electrolytes. Consume the electrolytes if you feel you need to. Consume them as your body, like my body craves the electrolytes. So I consume the electrolytes and I stop when I feel that my body is satisfied. If it's not, then I drink more. So do this intuitively. So Herbert, in short, yes, you can, but try to do it intuitively, and your body should guide and tell you the rest.
Great answer. Yes. And I just want to echo thanking Herbert for his support, because he's great. He's a member of our school community as well. Very, very supportive of us, and it's really appreciated. Talking of supporting, MJ has offered a super sticker of £4.99. No question attached. I think that's really very magnanimous. You can jump the queue, by the way, if you do a super chat, but some people just want to show some love. So MJ, that's really kind of you. That is really, really appreciated. So let's get to the next question then. So we've done the chocolate MCT question. Too much electrolytes. This is a nice one from Big Blue, I think, who was on last week. That name rings a bell, Big Blue. Is just eating fatty meat and nothing else okay every day? I only eat ground chuck and chuck steak or chuck roast and salt and water. But I want, like, before Richard gets into it, I would just go to the common sense of how animals eat. No one looks at a cow eating grass and thinks, not much diversity there. There's not much balance. That cow is eating grass. That's no good, is it? Or if you're looking at birds and eating just seeds, no one says, oh, well, that's no good, is it? There's what's known as species appropriate. You know, you wouldn't go to a lion and say, can you forget hunting those animals and could you have some bread? All right. So when I look at humans, we're talking about chuck steak, we're talking about red meat, salt and water. That's pretty species appropriate in my opinion. And fatty meat is what you want, because you've got the proteins and the fats. There's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. Not 0 gram of carbohydrate is required. I wrote in a Substack this week that went out and it looked at all the reports, 1999 report, IDECG working group, that categorically said the theoretical minimal level of carbohydrate intake is 0. And I just went through all the reports. You know, we had one in 2005 as well, which was the panel on macronutrients of the National Academies of Sciences. And they actually said the lower limit of dietary carbohydrate compatible with life apparently is 0, provided that adequate amounts of protein and fat are consumed. And that Substack went on and on with all the different people telling you that just protein and fat is fine. So that's my answer, but I'm sure Richard will jump in with more than 2 penneth worth.
Look, in essence, you are absolutely correct. We don't need any carbohydrate. Fatty meat, only eat ground chuck. Chuck is my favorite, both ground and in steak format. Look, most people can thrive on this. The body needs protein, the body needs fat. If we look at every cell within the body predominates water. If we remove the water, what's left is protein and fat, with sugar or polysaccharide only making 1 to 2% of the weight of that cell, which basically means that the body, including your bone and muscle, is made of protein and fat. The body makes all of the glucose that it needs through a process called gluconeogenesis. There are situations in which this pathway can become damaged, but that's a talk for another day. Look, Big Blue, people thrive on living this lifestyle on nothing more than fatty meat, animal proteins and natural fats. If you can do this, fantastic. Now, in my opinion, there may be a benefit to the addition of organ meats, but again, we're talking proteins, fats, possibly a little bit of glycogen depending on which organ meat, but not for the glycogen, but more for the vitamin B2 and vitamin B3. And the reason I say this is animal proteins, which are very high in B vitamins, including B2, for people who methylate slowly, they require a little bit extra, a little bit more B2, a little bit more of a helping hand, if you like. B2 is found in abundance in things like beef liver. So if you have the MTHFR defect, you can supplement with vitamin B2 and increase methylation with adding this in. So in essence, there are people out there who thrive on nothing more than animal proteins and natural fats. But the addition of organ meats may help if you methylate slowly. But carbohydrate, as Stephen said, in my opinion, is the amount required from dietary source or an exogenous source is in fact 0.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Richard. We've got a couple of super stickers as well from Nancy. Hi, Nancy. Haven't seen you this week, so I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. That's $4.99. Really appreciate that. And I think we've also got Herbert as well doing that. Hang on. I think Herbert did a super sticker and said that he's going to hug us. Thank you, guys. You are my heroes. If I meet you in person, I hope you don't mind a hug. Absolutely do not mind a hug. 100%. We do not mind that. Right. Amanda, there is a question I know you want to get to, Richard, but I'm trying to do them in order. Recommendations to recover gut health after taking antibiotics.
Yeah, brilliant question. So look, antibiotics, the medication. You know, people think that Stephen and I are against medication, and we are not against medication. There's a place for medication. If it wasn't for medication, at least several times throughout my life, I would be dead without question. So there is a place for medication. Now, antibiotics are a fantastic tool, but they do cause damage. They cause damage to the gut microbiome, and they can completely destroy and wipe out the way that the body works in a natural state. So what we need to do, in my opinion, to recover from this is get back to supplying the nutrients that we want our gut microbes to thrive on. So we look at pre and probiotics. Now, there are lots of different phylum and different types of bacteria, but we can classify them in 2 basic forms, Firmicutes and Bacteroidetes. Now, for me, being a carnivore, for example, I eat lots of animal proteins and natural fats, and this fuels and feeds the Bacteroidetes phylum, which basically means that those microbes will thrive on the foods that I'm consuming, and the Firmicutes will sort of make a shift downwards because we're not supplying the foods that they want to thrive on. Now, in my opinion, the microbes that thrive on animal proteins and natural fats are the best for us. So these are the ones that we want to feed. So we need to get back to eating incredibly healthy, nice fatty cuts of animal proteins. We don't want to be doing lean protein. We want to be doing a nice fatty cut of protein, even possibly preferencing higher fat. Obviously, removing any grains and seed oils, fruit, incredibly damaging to the body, believe it or not. And we can get onto this a little bit later if you like. Fructose, even though it's natural, it's not something that I believe that we would have consumed in high quantities in nature. So look, it's just get back to basics, get back to consuming high quality fatty cuts of animal proteins, natural fats, MCT oil. So coconut oil and MCT. Coconut oil is very high in a compound called C8 caprylic acid. It's around 6%. Around 6% of coconut oil is C8, or you can supplement with C8, which is natural, by the way. It is a compound that is found in goat's milk. It's also found in coconuts. It's just easier to extract from coconut. This will feed and fuel the gut microbes, and it will heal the gut. It will help heal intestinal permeability. It will help fuel the cells. It will help supply energy and upregulate the mitochondria, the efficacy of the mitochondria. It will also help with ketone production, transportation, and utilization. And it's basically an all-round fantastic substance for helping and aiding and repairing with gut problems. That's something that I consume most days. I used to consume it in coffee, but I no longer drink coffee. So I either just take it from the spoon or I'll add it to some water, or a hot beverage, or even a cold beverage. But it does tend to form a layer of oil on the top. But once you get over that, that's perfectly fine. But fatty cuts of animal proteins, and it's as simple as that. You're muted, Steve.
Sorry, I'm muted because I'm behind the scenes trying to get things in order, so we get everybody at the right time. But here we go. So the next question is from Nicola Williams. Someone close to me in my family might have liver cancer. Sobus, there anything I can do to help him other than the treatment that doctors are giving him? Please help me. I'm desperate and so upset over this.
Yeah, brilliant question. And apologies, Nicola. I'm so sorry to hear this. Look, you know, this is going to, and I need to be careful how I word this, because whenever we speak about this live on YouTube, it seems to cause harm to our channels. So I'm just going to call it the C word. Look, C is fueled by glucose. It's fueled by sugar. All carbohydrates break down into sugar. So any carbohydrate that someone who suffers with cancer is going to fuel that cancer. Essentially, cancer cells are metabolically inflexible. They can be fueled by fermentable fuels. Glucose being number one. It can further downstream use glutamate in order to fuel that. But glucose is the one that predominates within the diet. And this is the biggest lever to pull. So glucose, which is carbohydrate or sugar, we need to reduce, if not completely remove this. So when we remove carbohydrate or sugar, then the body will transition into a ketogenic state. C cells, I almost said the word that I don't want to say. The C cells are metabolically inflexible, which basically means that ketones do not fuel them. Therefore, somebody in a ketogenic state does not fuel C cells to the degree that somebody who is consuming lots of carbohydrate would. So the first protocol is to remove the carbohydrate. Fasting is a fantastic protocol. For how much you fast for, it depends up to you. There are people who have fasted for 24 hours, 48, 36. There are documented cases of people fasting for 40 days. I'm not going to tell you to do this because this is entirely up to the person involved and whether you can even talk them in to removing the carbohydrates. Grains, obviously very high in carbohydrates, also cause intestinal permeability, which is not going to help matters. Seed oils, vegetable oils, all of these need to go. You need to be thinking of high quality animal proteins and natural fats. When consuming the high quality animal proteins and natural fats, we want to think of a ratio of higher fat. So aim for added fats. So on a standard ketogenic or carnivore based lifestyle, I tend to recommend the fat as nature intended. So basically, if we consume a steak, eating the fat as it comes with no additional fats. With somebody who is combating C, then we need to increase the fat content. So added fats can be beneficial. So cook in things like butter, tallow, lard, ghee, even add these fats to the meal. Or even add additional fats in the form of egg yolks and maybe even A2 dairy if you struggle to get the fats in. But I would preference animal fats over anything else, including dairy. But look, first protocol, it's as simple as this. Now, Nicola, if your family member cannot do this, then you're in a stump. The issue that you're going to find is if you approach the doctor, they are going to be dead set against what I've just suggested because, believe it or not, they do not know what fuels C cells. Now, this goes back to the early 1930s where Dr. Otto Warburg won a Nobel Prize for discovering that C cells are fueled by glucose. We've known this for nearly 100 years, yet it seems to have lost its way. And it's lost its way because there's no money to be made off changing your diet. Now, this doesn't mean that the doctor is trying to turn a profit, but the doctor is trained by pharmaceutical companies. They are guided by the pharmaceutical companies. So if this family member close to you wants to make a difference, they need to go ketogenic and they need to consume a higher fat ratio to protein ratio. It is as simple as this. Implement fasting if you can, but I'm going to leave the fasting up to you. I've worked with a number of clients who have combated C, and some have done it through high-fat ketogenic lifestyles, and others have done it through carnivore. All have seen success. So which port of call you decide to implement is entirely up to you. But animal proteins, natural fats. But the most important thing is being in a ketogenic state. High fat, consuming animal proteins. You can supplement with things like exogenous ketones and MCT, the C8. This will help increase the level of ketones. Our good friend Andrew Scarborough, who as he was diagnosed with terminal C going back 11 years ago, I think, Steve, and
Yep.
he's currently 11 years in remission. He follows this port of call, and he supplements with things like the C8-MCT and the exogenous ketones, and many others do the same. So it is as simple as this: pull those levers, and hopefully we can start moving forward.
That's brilliant. I think I might have missed a question. I don't like that. Oh yeah, Gaza. Which is lower in deuterium, collagen supplements or glycine?
Ooh, good question. Do you know? I don't know.
Okay.
Let's think about it logically. What's going to be lower? If I had to put my head on the chopping block, I would say glycine, because collagen supplements are going to contain the glycine and hydroxyproline. But in all honesty, I don't know. But if we look at, and this is my opinion, Steve, you may have a difference of opinion on this. If we look at the outcomes, in most cases, collagen is going to be beneficial to most people. And what I mean by this is lots of people recently have said to me that salt contains lots of heavy metals. Everything in nature contains heavy metals, but what we gain from consuming said compound can either have a positive effect or a negative effect. Eating animal proteins, positive effect. Eating animal fats, positive effect. Eating plants, potentially negative effect, and we can get into this. Collagen is incredibly beneficial to the body. Collagen, there are like 23 different types, I think, of collagen, maybe 24, I can't remember. But the ones that get the airtime are type 1 and type 3. Type 1 predominates in the body. This is the type of collagen that we tend to obtain from marine sources, but is found in everything. But for supplementation purposes, it's higher in marine. This makes up hair, skin, nails, tendons, and type 3, which is bovine, is good for intestinal health. Now, these are incredible compounds that you will find in the connective tissue, in the knuckles and the bone marrow and all these things. And these are incredibly beneficial, in my opinion. And I think this is something that is missing in modern diet, even modern carnivore lifestyles. So coming back to the first question that we had tonight, Steve, can you live on just meat and salt and water? Yes, you can, and you can thrive. But in lots of cases, if we're not consuming the connective tissue and the collagen substances and the soft bones and the bone marrow, then some of us may be devoid of essential collagens, which can help heal and repair the body. So I think in pursuit of going down this rabbit hole and trying to find optimal health, I think sometimes we can make negative steps by trying to avoid some things when we are not looking for the positives in others. So look, collagen from natural sources, in my opinion, is a good thing. If you are suffering with issues, potentially, maybe if you are oxalate detoxing, then maybe collagen supplements are not good. And there is a reason for this, and we can get into that. But in most cases, if you are devoid, then the outcome is positive.
Excellent. And just for people that don't know what we're talking about, deuterium is I suppose you could call it heavy water. It's hydrogen that's a little bit bigger, deuterium, and it slows down the mitochondria because basically the mitochondria work less efficiently because it's used in their processes and it's slightly bigger. It really is that simple. So that's why deuterium is a question that people ask about. So, right, let's get to the next one. And this one's a nice, easy one for Richard. Because we're talking a lot about supplements tonight. Why does MTC powder, I'm imagining that's MCT powder, medium chain triglyceride powder, give you diarrhea if taken 1 to 2 scoops? How long does it take to build up in the system? Or is half beneficial chocolate and coconut powder?
Yeah, brilliant question, Amy. Another fantastic supporter of the channel. Look, there are 2 different types that I manufacture, which are the world's highest purity by certification, by the way. Medium chain triglycerides, again, these are compounds that are made naturally. So even though they come from supplements, these are fantastic supplements in order to increase the body's ability to make ketones. Now, MCT, which is bound to acacia fiber, can be problematic generally for people who have been carnivore for a long period of time. Generally, the oil seems to be better for people who have been living a ketogenic or carnivore lifestyle, because we have built up an intolerance, if you like, to fiber. Now, Amy, I don't know off the top of my head, I know you're a big supporter of the channel. Maybe you can chuck this into the comments, and let me know how long you've been on the journey. But generally what we tend to find is the powder works best for someone new to the lifestyle, someone who is already consuming fibrous compounds. They consume this, they can tend to consume a lot more, and this will create the benefits that the BHB does. So basically, the MCT is sent direct to the liver, where it's instantly converted into ketones, whether you are ketogenic or not. And there we can benefit from all of the downstream effects of the MCT powder and ketone production. Now, that tends to work best for someone new to the lifestyle. As you gravitate deeper and you start to become more strict along a ketogenic carnivore-based lifestyle, where we naturally tend to gravitate towards less plant compounds, the body seems to increase its early warning alarm systems. So basically what I mean by this is, if I was to eat broccoli, spinach, or kale now, it would upset my stomach. It would give me gastro distress. It doesn't mean that I am allergic or I have built up an intolerance to these compounds. That intolerance has always been there, but over the many years of consuming them, my body's built up an intolerance or a tolerance towards them. In the same way that we do with alcohol. So the first time we consume a bottle of beer or a glass of wine, we feel a little tipsy. The next time we can consume a little more. The time after that, it's more still. And we can continue to do this until we get to the point where we can drink lots and lots and lots, and we appear not to be drunk, or it appears that the alcohol isn't causing damage to the body, but it is. It is causing damage. It's just our ability to recognize that damage has been diminished. And this is what happens with grains and fibrous compounds, believe it or not. And we can get into the fibrous compounds later if we have time, and explain a little bit of epigenetics. But fiber is incredibly damaging to the body. It causes many, many issues, but we build a tolerance. Now, when we remove these compounds for a certain period of time and put them back in, it can cause gastro distress. So for a carnivore who is restricting fibrous compounds, when we put the powder in, it can cause gastro distress. So the oil seems to be more beneficial, Amy, for somebody who has been living a ketogenic and carnivore-based lifestyle for a longer period of time. But in simple terms, if you have the powder, just reduce the amount. So as you say, yeah, drop it down to half a scoop. This is still going to be beneficial. You can continue to increase this over a period of time, which is what I suggest with the oil also. So start with the oil with maybe half a teaspoon and build up to a tablespoon, and maybe even 1 to 2 tablespoons over a period of time. But start small and build up. But, you know, Amy, if you have been consuming or living a ketogenic and carnivore-based lifestyle for a prolonged period of time and avoiding vegetables, then maybe the oil may be more beneficial for you moving forward.
Brilliant. That's a good answer. Now, a lot of people are asking questions in the chat. We might not get to you all. So one of the things I will tell you about is our school community, where you can ask questions all the time and get lots and lots of answers. As you can see, this is what school looks like. You know, somebody's asked a question. Yeah, already 35 answers. The next one there, 17 answers. Only been on there 2 days. So you could join the school community. And also, in half an hour's time, we have an extra 45 minutes of live Q&A for the members. And also on a Monday, we do that as well. We have a live Q&A on a Monday for a whole hour. Included in the school community is also courses. They're free keto course. There's a free How to Be Carnivore course. All of the courses you can go through, and the more active you are in the community, more levels are unlocked. We can talk about thyroid there, where there's free ebooks. There's lots of commentary on videos from people like Ken Berry and Anthony Chafee talk about thyroid. We've got something on dairy there, which talks about the process of dairy, why it might be problematic, all about fruit and veg and the truth from the fruit producers themselves. Lots of free ebooks and PDFs, all that about protein, problem solving, my How to Be Carnivore book, and Richard and I did the Fat Club, where you get nearly 60 days, day by day, continual guidance on how to get the most out of this way of eating. And also there's the calendar. Now this week has been amazing. We had the live Q&A on a Monday. We had a live Q&A on a Tuesday. I did one at 6 o'clock and then 7 o'clock on a Wednesday. So that whole week was really good for all the members. There we are tonight over here, 8 o'clock. And then we got one on Monday, another one on Wednesday, another one on Sunday. So there's always a live Q&A going on. And if you want to join the school community, then there should be a link in the chat for you to join if you want to. If not, I will do that for you in a second while we go to the next question. I thought Richard was cutting and pasting it, but I would strongly recommend joining the school community. Many people in the chat talking about it as well. So we'll go back to the next question. Here we go. Right. Robin Chat, which is rather apt. Should I be concerned about being in range of familiar hypercholesterolemia? Latest blood test. Have hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, no symptoms, just been diagnosed with angina. So thanks for putting that in about the cardiomyopathy. So there's two types of that. There's obstructive and non-obstructive. It sounds like you've got the non-obstructive, where the muscle, it's basically the cardiac muscle is a little bit thicker, but it doesn't block the blood flow. It can cause a problem because if you imagine the vessel, the heart has vessels for blood, and if the walls are thicker, they can either expand out or expand in. If they expand in, then obviously there's less room for blood. So that's the first thing. FH, as we call it, for the hypercholesterolemia. If you manage it properly, plenty of evidence that people with that survive way past adolescence and generally have a good long-term prognosis. And to be honest, they live a sort of normal life compared to everybody else. You obviously, should you be concerned? Well, yes, you've got to be mindful of it because you've got these conditions, and to say, well, no, don't worry about it, it would be absolutely ridiculous. So you do need to keep a good eye on it, but there's nothing particularly troublesome if you're eating the right way, you're being mindful. I would obviously keep getting the occasional testing, so the FH screening is always good. You can also get some functional assessments, stress test of your heart. You can get what's called Holter monitoring, which checks for arrhythmias. There's loads of things you can do, and it's well known that these conditions can be managed pretty well. But yes, anything, if someone says to me, I'm constantly getting headaches, well, you've got to be mindful. You've got to try and find out why you're getting the headaches. Are you looking at a screen all night and stuff like that? So, yes, be concerned, but not concerned as in stress and not sleeping over it, but just be on top of it, get as much information as you can. I mean, if you were in the school group, Robin, you could give us more information, send us more bloods. We could look at other things, not just LDL cholesterol. It isn't cholesterol, of course, but that's how people talk about it. Talk about all your other lipids and what's going on. But yeah, Richard, do you want to dive into that?
I think you've nailed it. Look, it's in simple terms. Let me leave you with this. Jen Unwin, Dr. Jen Unwin, good friend of mine. She is within this range, and her total cholesterol, I think, is something like 23. And I may be wrong. It may be 18, but I know it's like close to high 20s, if not in the 20s. She's not concerned. That's good enough for me.
Yes, absolutely. Right. And of course, when they looked at patients recently, 119,000 patients being admitted to hospital with heart issues, 48% of them, so pretty much half, had normal or low cholesterol. So having low cholesterol, it seems to be just as problematic as having high. What I'm saying there is there's really no difference. There's other factors in play, I think. Normally something to do with high blood pressure, but don't want to spend all night talking about one particular subject. So let's get into the next one. But Robin, thank you. Great question, and we will take it seriously. I'd strongly recommend you joining the school group. Let's get a few people in the chat saying it's good. Right, Big Blue, are you saying 4 to 6 grams of salt a day or 4 to 6 grams of sodium?
Brilliant question. Steve, I'm trying to share a screen there. Can you make it live for me really quickly?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So
Sorry, I didn't
this,
spot that.
No problem. So Big Blue, this is the study that I mentioned earlier. So this was the study that covers 100,000 participants in 17 countries. And look, simply, this is sodium. So not total salt. Total salt, I think, is around 15 grams. Is that right? So about a tablespoon, give or take.
Mm-hmm.
But look, this is what the study yielded, was basically that all-cause mortality increased greatly when we go below 2 grams or 2,000 milligrams. And I'm guessing 1.5 is about there, which is way lower than even 10,000 milligrams. Now, this is what is excreted and not what is consumed. So the sweet spot, according to this, is 4 to 6. But I would argue that for somebody living a ketogenic carnivore-based lifestyle, that the consumption is closer to 10,000 milligrams or 10 grams of sodium each day. So this is an incredible study, and maybe we can get into this at a later date. But sodium is essential, potassium essential, magnesium, all of these things are incredibly beneficial. We need these. These are electrically charged minerals that allow the body to carry out much of its work. We quite literally can't move our arms. And our heart doesn't pump. We don't create energy without electrolytes. They are quite literally essential for life.
Oh, right. Brilliant. Sorry, you got rid of that. That's really quick. Thank you very much. Right. Oregon Steve is saying uric acid is hard on chronic kidney disease. Well, I would debate that firstly. But anyway, do you recommend a carnivore diet with chronic kidney disease? Yes, absolutely. I think it's about the best thing you can do. On my YouTube channel, you'll see success stories. I have hundreds of success story videos and over 500 success story written over the last 10 years. But many of those are people reversing their kidney disease. I had somebody literally given 2 weeks to live, and that was 5 years ago. People down to filtration rate of 5, reversing that, and many people reversing chronic kidney disease on carnivore. Protein seems to be very protective. So yeah, I would. Not sure why you've mentioned uric acid. Uric acid is actually an antioxidant. There are moments when it can be pro-oxidative, but in the main, there's plenty of studies that show that uric acid is an antioxidant, a true antioxidant. A blood test, well, you know, that isn't the be all and end all. You've got to look at everything in context. But did you have any symptoms of high uric acid? That's a thing. So yeah, Richard, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, let me just jump in. So I do my bloods regularly, and uric acid is one of the things that I always check, because we're told that meat consumption causes increase in this, and this isn't entirely true. So purines, which are created from the breakdown of cells for energy, so it's a perfectly natural process. ATP, GDP, as well as DNA and RNA, all of these can create purines, but purines do not cause gout. And in fact, 5 to 10 times more created within the body than we get obtained from the diet. So uric acid, as Stephen mentioned, is in fact an antioxidant. It is found in normal joints. But fructose can also increase this, but fructose is where the problem lies. Fructose is the only sugar that generates uric acid during its metabolism. The monosodium urate crystals are salts formed by the uric acid, and these monosodium urate crystals activate a number of inflammatory pathways which will amplify a gout attack. And the fructose can rapidly deplete ATP, leading to a leukocyte response, particularly through ICAM1. So it's not the uric acid or the red meat per se. It's the fructose, and fructose, which predominates in fruit. So it is the natural sugar that we find in fruit. So people believe that that's healthy. But even if you do not consume fruit, fructans, which are found in grains, break down into fructose. So if you consume a diet that is high in grains, these fructans will create the fructose. So things like, any form of fruit, essentially, grains, bread, pastas, all of these sorts of things. Alcohol can be incredibly problematic. Milk is a known contributor. Coffee can be problematic. So remove all of these, consume natural proteins, high quantities of natural proteins and animal fats. And generally what we see is a reduction in uric acid, but it's inflammation. And these things do not cause a problem unless inflammation is present. And this is the beauty of living a ketogenic and carnivore-based lifestyle. Purely by living the lifestyle, we are able to block much of these inflammatory pathways, particularly through the production of ketones in the form of beta-hydroxybutyrate, because beta-hydroxybutyrate will help block an inflammatory pathway called NLRP3 inflammasome. So contrary to popular belief, it's not the red meat, it's not the animal proteins. Remove the grains, remove the fruits, and you should find that your uric acid will drop. Not that that's the problem anyway, because as Stephen said, uric acid is an antioxidant, but it could be elevated because there is a pro-oxidant pathway there, but it's because there is an inflammatory state there. So we need to address the inflammation. Carnivore is the best way.
Yeah, I think just so people know, I did 10 years, a decade of private blood testing. And the thing with uric acid is you can have high uric acid, just use this as an example, and have no gout. And you can have low uric acid and have tons of gout. We use that as an example, which made me realize that the uric acid levels and gout, there's no real world clinical experience where you can tally it up. And that's because extracellular uric acid, which is what is in your serum, which is in your blood, in your plasma, is not the problematic pro-oxidant version of uric acid. You need to look at intracellular uric acid concentration. That's what you need. And you can actually get a thing called liquid chromatography tandem mass spectrometry, which we call LCMS for that reason. And that actually you harvest some cells, then they're lysed. So anything that's got the word lysine, like glycolysis, is cutting it. So you cut it basically, and then you use a sort of an isotope tested thing for uric acid in the cell, and that's really good, but it's very expensive, very nuanced, and if you've got no symptoms, I wouldn't worry about it. But anyway, right, I don't want to get too technical. That's not the point of this question and answer, but for those that like a little bit of that, we just did a bit of that. Jennifer is saying, hello gentlemen, as a rule of thumb, we should be starting to cut out seed oils and grains for diet change, but why not start with sugar? Asking for a friend. Thanks.
Brilliant question, Jennifer. Look, I had this conversation with Dr. Eric Westman at the PHC conference this year. Look, so carbohydrate is going to cause more problems with insulin than anything else. So you're right. You know, the general way of thinking would be, well, let's just remove carbohydrate. But look, there's a problem to this. If you were to hit the street and ask 100 people to name some carbohydrates, you'd be surprised how many of these people do not even know what a carbohydrate is, let alone the carbohydrates break down into sugar. So carbs is sugar. It's the same thing. Many people do not know this. Because we're in this community, we just accept these things and we just assume everybody else understands them, but they do not. Now, in my opinion, and it is just my opinion, and I'm sure Steve will jump on board of this. Grains predominate in modern diet. We wake up and we eat cereal for breakfast. If it's not cereal, it's toast or bread, and then we get to work and it's a croissant or a bagel. We go for a coffee and it's a cake. It's always grains. When we eat our meal, we're consuming pasta. If we're trying to be healthy, so we go for lean protein and we go for rice or pasta. All of these things are very, very high in grains. So in my opinion, the easiest thing to tell somebody is to stop eating grains, because people know what grains are. So if I were to say to you, Jennifer, stop eating grains, right? Well, I wake up in the morning. All right, well, I can't eat my breakfast cereal, my Weetabix, I can't eat my muesli, so because that's a grain. I'm not going to eat that. So what am I going to eat instead? Well, let's have some bacon and eggs cooked in butter. Okay, so now I go for my morning coffee. Well, I can't have my bagel or my cake, so let's just have my coffee. Do you know what? I'll have some double cream because I'm doing a keto lifestyle. So now we've restricted not only the grains, but the carbohydrates. Then we come on to lunch. Now, we're not consuming the pasta or the rice or the bread or anything else because we're restricting grains. Now, because grains predominate in modern diet, when we remove them, by default, we consume and increase the amount of animal proteins and fats that we consume. Carbohydrate predominate in grains. 70 to 80% of the weight, if you like, of grains are carbohydrate, which means that they are 70 to 80% sugar. So by removing the grains, we are therefore removing the carbohydrates. But there's a double benefit to this. Now, in my opinion, any gravitation towards healing and repairing begins with healing the gut. Now, if you consume grains, you have intestinal permeability. Grains contain a compound called wheat germ agglutinin, which causes the release of a molecule called zonulin. When zonulin is released, it causes a gap to appear in the tight junction between the epithelial cells. This is basically poking holes in your gut. We do not want this intestinal permeability. This is the root cause of all autoimmune disease. There are other contributing factors like medication and alcohol and so on and so forth. But grains, because they predominate in the diet, they are the main cause of autoimmune across the board. So by removing the grains, we're not only removing the carbohydrate, or most of it, we're also removing the lectins and healing the gut. And healing the gut, in my opinion, is job number one when it comes to improving health and well-being. Now, these lectins, they don't only cause intestinal permeability. The grains found within also contain phytic acid. Along with the lectins, these will block the absorption of other nutrients. So the phytic acid and the lectins can block the absorption of things like zinc, iron, and magnesium by as much as 100%, which basically means if you consume that, if you consume a bowl of pasta, with a piece of steak, which is highly nutrient dense, the lectins and the phytates within the pasta is enough to block much of the amino acids and the cofactors zinc, iron, and magnesium found within the highly nutrient dense animal proteins. This is a problem because now we're not absorbing as many of the amino acids, and we're also devoid of essential cofactors. Zinc is essential for the production of testosterone, which is essential for both men and women because testosterone goes on to create estrogen. If we devoid this, then we create and cause huge problems with hormones across the board. And that's just one example. So the reason that we begin with the grains is because it's multifaceted. We are hitting many different factors and different targets, if you like, or we're pulling a whole host of levers when we remove the grains, not just the carbohydrates, but we're removing all of these other detrimental compounds which are causing problems. When we do this, then we begin to heal the gut, and now we gravitate deeper towards a carnivore journey. And as you say, seed oils, incredibly damaging to the liver. They also lead to they also cause intestinal permeability. They also cause damage to the liver, which leads to insulin resistance in the context that we understand it. So in my opinion, and I'll let Steve jump in on this, by removing the grains and the seed oils, that is far more beneficial than trying to teach somebody what a carbohydrate is and carbs are sugar. So that's why, at least I begin there, and I believe that that is the best approach.
Brilliant. I don't need to jump in there, Richard, because you nailed it, as you always do. It's brilliant to sit in every week. I get 2 hours of education on a Sunday night. I love it. Right. For people that have been messaging me, I do have 2 books here. How to Be Carnivore, which is a nice handy paperback, but it's written in big print. It's really easy to follow if you're interested in that. And many people are questioning the bit about bloods. Well, I did do 10 years. And 10 years of working in a private blood testing lab made me want to write this book, A Guide to Blood Tests in the Context of a Low-Carb, Ketogenic or Carnivore Way of Eating. Absolutely jam-packed with real-life examples of where we're being misled on many of the main markers that we talk about today. For instance, vitamin C, EGFR, blood urea nitrogen. So just to be honest, I won't bore you, but they're really good if you're worried about bloods and stuff like that. And anyway, next question from, sorry?
Incredible books.
Thank you very much, sir. Josh,
I own all of them.
Bloating on lion for weeks, been strict for a while now and still get digestive issues when my fat is too high, but I struggle to eat enough to not lose weight. Cut out toothpaste, xylitol. If you're having trouble with fat malabsorption, there's many ways to deal with this. One of the easiest ways is to just have smaller meals with a bit more frequency, because I also noticed you're struggling to eat enough. So you still need to eat the same volume of food, but if you're eating 2 meals a day or 3 meals a day, you can go to 5. You can do this. It's not a big problem. There are other things you can do. I'm not a big fan of things like ox bile or digestive enzymes, but you can definitely, if you want to get over that hump for a bit, you could look at some sort of supplement. I don't sell those supplements. I'm just saying, from experience of dealing with people, that tends to help some people that have problems with fat malabsorption. The other thing you could also look at is having your fattier meals earlier in the day and see if that works for you. And you can flip that. If it doesn't work for you, you can have your protein earlier in the day and see how that goes. But Richard, what would you say?
Yeah, brilliant advice. I agree completely. I think more frequently. So this is the issue that we struggle with when it comes to being ketogenic and carnivore. The community seems to be incredibly dogmatic, and they say to eat all. We hear of everyone eating 1 meal a day. That doesn't suit everyone. We hear people who are living too mad, eating 2 meals a day. Look, in the initial phases, it doesn't matter as long as you are restricting the toxic compounds. That's the most important thing. So as Stephen says, eat more frequently and eat smaller meals. Now, what this is indicative of, Josh, is that the body is having issues, with bile production initially, and then bile reabsorption. And this is because you've probably had a lifetime of lack of choline and cholesterol and saturated fats, which stimulate the bile production and reabsorption. So your body has almost lost its intelligence, if you like, to produce the bile. So what happens when we consume our food, our animal proteins? It goes into the stomach and the stomach acid. So we need an acidic environment, which we can supplement with zinc in order to do this. Picolinate, zinc picolinate is going to be the best form in order to do this. This will increase the stomach acidity, and this will help. This is the first part of the digestive process once it's in the stomach. Then it goes on to the next part of the digestive system where the bile is produced, and the bile emulsifies these proteins and fats, and it basically increases the surface area for the pancreatic enzymes to go to work so it can carry on along its merry way. And then the bile is meant to be reabsorbed in the small intestine, but your body has lost its intelligence, Josh, to reabsorb the bile. So what you can do at this stage is you can supplement with taurine and glycine. So supplementing with half a teaspoon of each 20 to 30 minutes before a meal will help stimulate the bile production, and it will help stimulate the bile reabsorption. So in my opinion, what I would recommend is to supplement with zinc picolinate, depending on the acidity in the gut, which you can test for, by the way. You want to look at around 25 milligrams. This will give you 5 milligrams roughly of elemental zinc. You can double this, and you can consume that as much as 3 times a day, but start small. So start with a small serving, maybe 20 to 25 milligrams of zinc picolinate, maybe 15 to 20 minutes prior to a meal, and 20 to 30 minutes prior to the meal, half a teaspoon of each of taurine and glycine. And in combination, this will increase or help increase the stomach acidity, help increase the bile production and the reabsorption. As Stephen says, you can use bile salts, which will help. But what will happen if you continue to consume this? It will downregulate the body's ability to produce and reabsorb naturally. If you are going to supplement, I would suggest to do that on your bigger meal, and then try to wean off for the smaller meals. But that's what I would suggest over the bile salts initially. But as Stephen says, if you need 5 meals, then do 5 meals. Don't fall into the trap of, well, everybody else says that we need to fast or we need to eat 1 meal a day. Some days I eat 1, some days I eat 2. In my early days, I was eating 4 and 5. So it's very much a series of incremental changes.
Brilliant. Amy, just want to thank you for the $10 super chat. Love today's chats. You guys are amazing. Thank you very much. Thank you also to the people that are saying the book, My Blood's book, is good. Do appreciate that. Right, here we go. We got Gracie. I think this is going to be the last question. I have put a link into the chat to go to school. If you're interested in joining the school, there is the chat there in the link. Right, so some carnivore experts say there's no need for liver on carnivore, even if you have MTHFR. Do you think that muscle meat is enough? In this case? Well, I understand firstly why people recommend liver, because it's got methylated B12 and it's got methylated folate, and that's the problem with this genetic condition, that you can't process the folate, and B12 could be an issue. So that's why some people recommend liver, but I don't think you necessarily have to eat liver. That's just my way of thinking. I think it's all down to whether you've got any symptoms. I mean, just because you have the MTHFR, it doesn't mean that you're going to have problems. Elevated homocysteine is something you see on carnivore anyway, because homocysteine is part of a sulfur processing. But if you've got fatigue and brain fog, or you've got your mood issues, those sort of things, cardiovascular problems, poor detoxification, digestive issues, maybe you want to get into looking at the methylfolates or methylated B12 or some liver. But what do you think, Richard? Because we've got like 4 minutes before we go over to school. What do you think?
Perfect. Look, brilliant question and a brilliant answer. It depends. It depends on the person. Gracie, ultimately, as Stephen says, it depends on the symptoms. Are you suffering with any issues? The simple way to test this is to consume some beef liver. And to give you some context of this, as Stephen says, it contains methylated folate and methylated cobalamin, which is all part of methylation, which begins with the folate cycle. So if we look at this entire pathway, it involves 5 different processes or cycles, pathways, at least. So it begins with the folate cycle, the methionine cycle, the transsulfuration pathway, the urea cycle, and the BH4 cycle. Now, if we look at the very first few steps of this, coming back to the point I made earlier, B2 is an integral part to this. Now, B2 is found in abundance in muscle meat. If you eat enough muscle meat, you will obtain enough B2 in order to increase and offset this slow methylation. Therefore, you will upregulate this pathway, and this defect is no longer a problem, or at least far less of a problem. If you do not consume enough muscle meat, then supplementing or adding in, I should say, some organ meats, I believe, can be incredibly beneficial. So, Gracie, it depends on how much you eat. How much do you need to eat? Well over 1 kilo of animal proteins a day, in my opinion, because the amount that we need to increase in 1 kilo is probably just on the cusp. So in order to upregulate this, we need to increase or consume more than 1 kilo of muscle meat a day. If you eat less, then adding in some beef liver may be beneficial because of the B2, the B3, and as Stephen says, the methylated folate and cobalamin. And there is a reason that people will say not to consume this, and it's to do with vitamin A toxicity and copper toxicity. But we can answer this. I'd love to get into this in school. So if you guys want to understand why I believe that these are fine and not a problem, sign up for school. I'll pop a link in the comments and we can get into that live tonight.
Yeah, I wasn't being facetious. This is our secret signal that we have 1 minute left. And the brown one is if we have 2 minutes left. So that's what we do. So I don't have to be rude. And Richard spots it. No, well, we've got the YouTubers. We didn't go on Apple Crumble tonight. We tried that last week. We may be going to do it next week as an experiment. Anyway, those on YouTube are not going to join us on school. No problems. I hope you enjoyed the hour. If we didn't get to your question, do apologize. Don't forget next week, if you got the same question, get here early, put it on before we even start going live. That is actually possible to do. You can use a super chat to jump the queue if you want to. You can use a super sticker to get your question moved forward as well. which is all appreciated, and it supports the channel. If you're not coming over to school, that's a shame, but it would be nice to see you over there. But if you can't make it, no worries. We'll see you next Sunday at 7 p.m. in state-controlled Britain. If not, if you're coming over to school now, or our existing members who are sitting there waiting, great to see them as well. But anyway, thank you for tuning in this week.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. Some brilliant questions.